Hello. So we were asked by Patreon to do a deeply technical video on employees and contractors and volunteers, everything you need to know. That's what this video is. So first caveat is the notepad. I am not a financial advisor, job advisor, or any sort of guy you can sue for this information, which is educational only. Okay. Start there. So the knowledge that I picked up as a result of this is from running businesses for a bunch of years and is reliable only to the extent to which I understand it. So if you want an expert on this and you're running a pretty serious business, consider a CPA, tax attorney, something like that. I've never used one because I think this information is pretty straightforward, but your mileage may vary. Also, it's in the context of like what I'm doing too, right? So I'm in an esports agency world where the lines are a lot more blurred. So that said, we've got three types of classifications. What I want to do here is not just give you the technical information, but kind of also tell you at what levels of business you might want to consider using each of these. And let's begin. We've got volunteers. We got 1099 contractors. And we have employees, also known as W-2. So I'll just put that here. So real quickly, overview of all three. Volunteer is a person who will do something for you for no money. This can also include interns. A 1099 contractor is a person that you make a separate agreement with, either written or just verbally, and you pay them to do something. A true 1099 contract is called a 1099 because the 1099 is the U.S. form that you have to submit to the IRS. That's the tax form. If you have paid a contractor more than $600 a year. So if you've paid you do not have to submit a form as of the time of this recording. If you have paid less than $600 a year to anybody. But if you do, you need to 1099 them. 1099 makes them a contractor that works for you. A W-2 is a person under an employment agreement and is a person that you submit a W-2 for. The implications around having an employee are important to understand and beyond the scope of this video. But if you have a full-time employee, there's a lot of stuff you have to do that you don't have to do on these other two. And for that reason, I usually stick around with these tiers. So I want to go step by step and kind of talk about how I utilize these in a business that does a multi-million-dollar business that does decent ARR, and how I've used them in the past in businesses like that, and how I've used them in small businesses because I haven't just run businesses like that. So run businesses at all levels. So volunteer and intern, not all levels. I've run a Fortune 500. I don't know. Maybe if Twitch keeps asking. Okay, so like a Fortune. Outside of the Fortune 500 talk, volunteers and interns. Let's start there. So I have a hot take to begin this video. I freaking hate interns. I will never hire them. I get hundreds and hundreds of requests for interns. I think interns are a horrible idea for your business, especially if you are starting your business. A lot of people think that their first hire or their first take on should be an intern. This is a huge mistake because interns require a ton of infrastructure. So I view interns as an opportunity for someone to come in, learn from you for free on how to compete with you, and then leave and do very little, since they can always justify the ROI they produce against being an intern. So I think that it's funny too, because I have a lot of videos on why you should work for free. So I think if you can be an intern, that's great, right? But like if you can go to a company, learn everything they have to teach you, and you can do that for free and you're financially sustainable outside of that for some determined amount of time that it takes you to do that, and you can increase your own value as a human being, fantastic. If you are a business owner or a person who getting interns is bad, because if I can't pay a person, I can't hold them accountable. This has been a huge issue for me in the past in business. I have had many interns, and particularly in the esports world, interns are popular. You have interns all the time, and every single one of them has underperformed, and I feel like I can't pull them into my office and say, look, like, what are your established KPIs? Because ultimately, I'm not paying that person. That transactional value isn't there in their mind. There's that ROI isn't there in their mind. Whereas if I pay a person either as a contractor or a W-2, what I can do is I can assign them KPIs. So KPIs are key performance indicators. And it means they are objectives that I really want somebody to understand or do to get to a point in time where they're like succeeding at like what we can both kind of like evaluate their success. So if I look at like any kind of job that I've ever done, I can pull up some Google Docs, which I'll do now. Of It's going to look weird in the context of like this unedited video, but it's Patreon, so whatever. People just deal with it here. But I'm going to look for some people that I've hired. I don't know. Let's do like a video editor position and see what that is. It's a guide, content editor. Maybe I'll look for like sales. Here we go. So here's an example of what I mean. This is my outbound sales specialist position that I hire for Novo. And you can see the core objectives here are generate leads via outreach to potential partners in multiple industries, create new partnerships with new and existing brands and clients. This is for a W-2 employee, by the way. Maintain each deal in a CRM. So I can get really, really gnarly specific with these deals. So I can say how you craft correspondence. I can dictate success based on like, okay, I think that like generate leads via outreach to potential partners in multiple industries. And then once I actually hire this person, we figure out what that looks like. So is that 5? Is that 10 outreaches? Is that generally I consider 5 outreaches a day, and for sales, 5 outreaches a day and 1 solid closed deal per month is a great set of KPIs. So I can assign W-2 people this. That's great, right? But if I have an intern, sure, I can do the same thing. I can hold them to that. But what really do I have on them, right? Like if I'm not, it's a commitment thing. If they're not committed to the business because I'm not paying them, I'm not committed to them because they're not here forever. Then like, what have we got, right? It's kind of like having a weird side chick, right? With like no expectations. Like it's not like as rewarding of a relationship as like when you make some commitments and put some stuff down on paper. So for that reason, I don't like volunteers and interns. I also really don't like spiritually the idea of paying a person nothing to do something. I think that's not good. I think that a lot of people use interns and volunteers and burn them out and don't teach them, and that people that are trying to become volunteers and interns need to be very aware of this, and they need to be guarded with what kind of what kind of businesses that they join. And they should be very communicative to those businesses on like, what do I have to gain here if I work hard and I'm here? Is there some kind of paid position down the funnel, or what do I have to learn like for what I'm giving up, which is like my time and effort here for free? That's a question that you have the right to ask as an intern, and you need to be really careful with, because I think a lot of companies burn interns and volunteers as ammo, basically, in like the fire of like just grinding out some like useless tasks or stuff. Like this is particularly relevant in like traditional businesses, lawyer offices, things like that. Interns get a pretty hard rap, like doing the same thing over and over again, and don't particularly learn for maybe the sort of like distant promise of like some kind of promotion on like uncertain KPIs. So I don't like interns. I just don't like the idea of it on either side. Usually ignore my Steam New World because I was bringing back up my notes. So 1099 contractors, move on to that. So 1099 contractors are great. I use contractors for almost everything. Anything that has to do with graphics design, any services, PR and marketing, external and third-party services are great for contractors. Video editing, help with content, thumbnail design, all that is really good for contractors. This is generally research teams. So this is generally there's a couple of categories where I think qualifies for contractors. And then we're going to talk about the difference between 1099 and W-2 contractors, or contractors and W-2 employees. So this is anything I can't hit over the net, or anything I can hit over the net that's less than 30 hours a week, which basically means like, can I solve the problem for less than 30 hours a week? Great. Otherwise, I need an employee. You would be surprised how many problems you can solve for less than 30 hours a week. You can solve most problems. The only ones you can't are like sales, biz dev, and like, on from there. Most of the ones you can solve. Contractors at 30 hours a week. So like if I can do less than that, these are like third-party services. So anything to do with like GFX design, thumbnails, content creation, help, promotion, right? So like a lot of people that are content creators or business owners don't realize they can just like hire somebody on contract to like do their promotion. And typically these will be people that I do flat dollar per hour for, or per project basis. And I actually don't physically contract most of my contractors or any of them, just because if I were to do projects that were several $1,000s in scope, I would then do that. But because like most of my stuff is like 35 to 100 an hour or like per project basis, just like $100 to like $500 per project, I don't really sweat it. Um, Contracting wise, there's like just not a lot of ways that can bite you. If I pay for the service and the service is rendered, I do everything through PayPal for contractors on a business account that I only use for business. And as long as those services are rendered slash I pay for it, there's no real problem there. And I've actually never, like literally never, run into a problem with contractors out of the probably hundreds that I've worked with through various businesses or like directly worked with dozens and dozens, but like hundreds otherwise. I've never run into a problem with that. So with contractors, is you want to keep your expectations very clear. Much of the skill of hiring contractors is in the way that you communicate with them and like how you communicate. So you want to like really bullet point and understand what you're after and what your outcomes are before you communicate with contractors. Contractors are inherently going to be less dedicated to your business than your staff is because they're not staff, they're not employees, they're not like directly tied to it. So you should come in with the expectation that your contractor doesn't owe you anything but the service they're providing. Don't ask them for extra shit. Don't ask them for stuff that's like they're not going to do for free, and be very rewarding with your contractors. I tip my contractors always if I think they do very fast work or just at random. Like I'll just literally add 15 to 20% on top of something if I think that they warrant it for whatever reason arbitrarily. Overpaying contractors, promising an hour rate, and then paying past that. The other thing I try to do too is I will set an expectation with a contractor with the idea that they're going to get paid more and then try to stay with that. So like a good example is that like it used to be that my thumbnails that I paid for were $10 per thumbnail. Now they're closer to 30 just because like the Patreon has happened, the business has evolved, and you know so thumbnail people are more rewarded. There's also a system in place now where in our Discord chat you can submit a second thumbnail. So like let's say that one person four people send thumbnails in. If we select one, we pay that person, but the one we don't select, that's the next runner up, we also pay like that person half the rate. So that's just like an example of like taking care of contractors in a good way. And I just like I try not to hold them to any expectations. I think I can fail at this sometimes, but like I don't want them to do work for free at all that's not like paid in some way or supported in some way. I also try to give them other benefits. Like for example, all of my contractors that are through Novo also have access to like all of this content at Patreon, things like that, like anything I can provide them. And I also like frequently make connections for them or like will reference them or add them on resumes, things like that. So any kind of value I can provide to contractors is good. I will use contractors for everything, and I will like I'll just like everything from like emote artists like to everything I can possibly use. Contractors are like the sort of the foundational backbone, and I'll try to find very competent contractors that I can go back and forth on. And contracting is just a process of just like continuously like vetting people and not being afraid to say like, hey, we just can't work together. Your work isn't up to par. I found better people. Sometimes you should just bring new people in just to shake things up. And people will just attrition out like just over time, get busy with other things or whatever, get involved in other projects. And some of your best contractors you can also move to W-2, which we should talk about now. So the difference between a W-2 employee and a not W-2 employee, which is a contractor, would be easily explained through the IRS. And actually, the IRS is a great resource for these kind of things because a lot of people are asking me, well, how do I know what is a contractor and what is a employee? And so there's some common law rules, which they won't necessarily solve the problem 100%, but they're very straightforward. So, for example, there's 3 different overviews of control, and you can click on each one of these to kind of figure out specifically what they are. But in general, does the company have control or right to control what the worker does, and how does the worker do their job? So that would be a case for an employee. Are the business aspects of the worker's job controlled by the payer, including things like how the worker is paid, expenses are reimbursed, or what tools are supplied? And are there written contracts or employee-type benefits, pension plans, insurance, vacation pay? Will the relationship continue if the work is performed? And is the work performed a key aspect of the business, right? So a business basically has to make a sort of subjective evaluation of whether this is an employee or not. And at some point, like if you're employing a person at like 30 to 40 hours a week as a contractor, they're almost inevitably going to be an employee. Um, I usually employ contractors at like a maximum of, I'd say, 5 to 10 hours a week. I think even that's like pushing it. So a couple hours a week per contractor for whatever. Um, I also like to use third party services. So I will contract businesses. So for example, like one thing I do on and off in my life is I contract outsourcing firms, like people that are in India or actually pretty much just India that will just do random things like find me a pair of pants that I really like, things like that. Like I'll outsource for that kind of stuff. So you can leverage businesses that do this as well. And one thing with contractors that I really challenge you to think about is just the sheer amount of possibility with them. I think is underestimated, like a lot. So I think that most people think of contractors as like, okay, well, yeah, sure, they can do like my graphics design, but like really, any third party service can be a contractor. I use contractors all the time for things around the house, for things like I use Thumbtack for moving stuff. I paid a contractor once to stand in line for me at Aquaman, so I didn't have to wait 2 hours at the theater. So I drove down to Seattle and like 15 minutes before, and then I just took his place in line and walked into the front seat. That was great. Saved 2 hours of my time. Cost me like $35. Super worth it, right? So like, there's different, and then maybe in like a more of like a business application, can you pay for marketing? Can you pay for promotion? Can you pay for someone to like just go around on Reddit and post shit for you? Like that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of possibilities that you can pay contractors for, and like it's worth it for you to like sit down and say, how am I like okay, I've got this like budget that I'm spending on my business, or potentially I could spend some money on my business. Like how would I do it? And I think one of the most effective ways to do that is to think about how you can utilize contractors. I think it's really great. So for W-2s, at what point like W-2 employees, once you've like reviewed the IRS stuff, you say, okay, I've got a W-2, now what? I could make a entire course or series on like how to take care of employees, and it's like way beyond the scope of this video for sure. But suffice to say that like there's a couple of things I would say. The number one is clear communication and expectations of role. This person should be doing something objective that you can track and measure every day. And you should have a 1, 3, and 6 month plan with this person. I say with and not for. Important, right? Important connecting word. Because if you have a 1 or 3 or 6 month plan for this person, this implies that this person is like your staff or someone that works for you. I don't like that terminology, and I don't view any of my staff relationships like that. I think that we work together or I work for them. And I'm not just saying that as like a woke Silicon Valley CEO. I'm saying that in like a literal sense that I am in service to that person. That person is choosing to spend their time, money, and energy in my company. And I need to be available to them to accomplish those objectives, right? So my job as a C-level executive is to facilitate their job and to make it as easy as possible and be there to solve problems that they feel might be out of spec. And then to give them absolute freedom and ownership to do the rest. So when I say you have a 1 to 3 and 6 month plan with that person, I mean that you have sat down and you've both determined those goals. So like, for example, like the 5 outreaches a day that I have for salespeople are not arbitrary. That's a number that I worked out with like each of them by asking the question, what do you think is realistic to accomplish our goals here? That often is paired with things like commission structure or like aggressive structures of like providing extra value. So like, for example, if my salespeople are making more aggressive commissions, it's an easier conversation to say like, what are your expectations? And you'd be surprised that like people aren't joining companies and they aren't usually picking a job, especially a job in like the world that we're in, because they want a easy way out. Or people go work at like middle level Microsoft, like middle level like large companies to like avoid work, and oftentimes fail like because there's some really high powered teams in those companies, right? There's plenty of different ways to avoid work, and most of those people aren't at this level. You can expect that like your staff is going to be motivated and really want to perform for the company as long as the incentive is there to do better. But like if you play them like a flat rate with no means of like going upward or promotion or potential, and then are surprised when their expectations of their position are lower, like you shouldn't be surprised by that, and you get out of it what you put into it. So with W-2 employees, clear communication and expectation of the role is really good. The KPIs that I mentioned before. and then just kind of like tracking and really monitoring. There's a lot of like, I think that like 10 to 20% depends on the industry you're in is like coaching. So you should be in a position where you're trying to make that person better. I think some of the most valuable staff that I've ever had was like, I go back to, I think probably the number one was a lady at CLG who started off as a social media person and now runs marketing for 100 Thieves. That's like an enormous accomplishment. And so she did that herself, but I had some, tiny percentage of the catalyst there that I earned, right? By just like trying to facilitate that person's growth and development. And I would hope to be in that position for W-2 employees. If you're starting to see that having a W-2 employee is a very large commitment and requires a lot of time and energy, you are right. Because, and this goes all the way back full circle to why I really do not like working with interns, because if I have a W-2 employee who I'm paying competitively and who is set to that expectation, we should be in a evolving relationship that is like growing in the way that I'm talking about. I do not want to do this kind of work for an intern. I don't want to like set up all those expectations and like just for them to leave or have no guarantee or no like attachment to the business. I don't like that. You could say employees could leave too. It's harder though. It takes a lot more for an employee to like want to leave a job, and you usually have to be doing something wrong as a leader to facilitate that. Not always, but usually. So with a W-2 employee, the thing that I'm trying to tell you here is that like you're committing a lot to this, and you really need that to be sure that that person is taken care of and is going to really be on their shit. And you need to be really sure that you need that person. A really classic problem at all levels of business is that people just hire people because they're trying to solve a problem, or they read some business book where they were like, focus on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. Well, I need to hire someone for my weaknesses. I'm not good at sales, so I need to hire somebody for that. Well, you better get good at sales if you're running a business, right? I have a robust sales team. Like right now, I've got 3 people on it, and they're all DR. They all DR to me, right? But still, I do my own sales all the time. I outreach to people on LinkedIn. I don't particularly think I'm that great at sales, but it doesn't matter. I need to be in the game, right? And if you're hiring somebody because you are just like you're trying to avoid doing some form of work or something in your business, that is probably the thing you should be doing and understanding. Similarly, like a lot of people, like some of their first hires in business are like a finance guy, right? You should really understand your own finances. You should really understand your own balance sheet, how to read it and how to do it. You can contract bookkeeping services, for example, for like $125 to $150 a month. That's a good use of your money, but like understand how your business works before you're farming that out. So what else on employees? Like, generally speaking, you also need to do a back-end calculation on an employee where the value that employee is, take the total salary and then add like 40% to it for your own time, energy, and effort. That's like the sort of arbitrary or subjective value of that relationship, the cost of it, not value, cost of it. Does that make sense? Sorry. So like you pay that person $40,000 a year. Okay, well, let's just tack on an extra like 10 to 15K because that's the time investment, the cost of you training that person, being with that person on a weekly basis, developing their KPIs, developing them, listening to their complaints, right? All that stuff. And building a real relationship with them. Take that whole cost and then throw it against what ROI they're providing for the company. If you are on your first 10 employees in a company and you cannot objectively prove you cannot objectively prove their ROI. So by objectively, I mean that on a piece of paper, you can math out how much they're making you. So if you pay a person $40K a year and you cannot math out how that person is making you 80 or 100 or 150 in real revenue, you are screwing up, and you have employees that aren't doing good for you. That's not good. So that's not you may find that it's very easy to hear me say that, right? And it makes sense. Well, every employee in a company is going to be making more money than they're losing. How hard can that be? It's hard, right? In a particular company, I had 2 secretaries who were really involved in the culture of the company. They were there for a long time. they didn't really put the hours in at work. And like a really simple math equation when I came into that company to evaluate it was these two people are costing you a combined 80K a year, and their actual value is like maybe $5,000 a year to the company. So it's not just that like like people might, I think people are going to skip, like gloss over this section like eyes glazed, but like not realize that it's actually hugely important that you evaluate both your, especially your W-2s, as we're talking about right now, but also your 1099 contractors on like what is the objective value they're providing. If you spend $1,000 contracting graphic design and you think that makes your stream better, or like the new logo is going to attract more people to your restaurant, are you sure? Like, okay, you can spend that kind of money, but you better do it first in the context of this is how it provides actual objective ROI, which means you're going to have to make harder decisions around who you hire and who you contract. And they should be more like sales positions, people that are doing more kind of outreach for your business or selling products and services, affiliate marketers or things like that, right? These are things you need to be thinking about. I would stop, like, a lot of people spend a lot of money on extraneous bullshit that has no objective return. They think it might help their business. So like, for example, this happens with content creators. They'll do this all the time with like equipment. I'm going to buy a green screen and I'm going to buy a $500 mic. The value of it will come from me running my broadcast or my YouTube with better audio quality. And that's just a sort of internal justification they make in their head when it's not true. Like it probably won't provide that kind of value. It might, but it probably won't if you haven't done the homework first to actually show how you can spend that money. So like so many people are afraid of like just putting a couple of dollars back on the back end of like pay-per-click AdWords for their product or service because it's real money at that point, right? You'll spend $1,000, $2,000 for a contractor to redo your whole brand design, but you won't spend $50 a week on Facebook ads, which will take your actual product to the next level because that's a hard investment. That's like a thing where you got to try and you could lose, right? With a contractor, like you get your service, you're done. That's a huge mistake that people are making, like massive oversight. Same thing happens with humans. So like you contract a person to do something because like that $1,000 was worthless, didn't provide ROI for your company, or worse, you hire somebody to do a job that you don't want to do or that you feel needs to get done, but you haven't attached any objectives or any kind of like outcome to that job. You haven't attached to like how this actually produces value for you and your company objectively, dollar per amount, right? Like how does that $40,000 a year person make you 100K? Or what's the multiplier? Is it 2x, right? That's 80K. Is it 3x, 4x, 5x? $50,000 a year, $150,000 a year, 3x, right? What's it going to be? Generally looking for a 3 to 5x multiplier on employees, but I don't usually achieve that. I might get like 1.5 to 2. I don't know. But it's rough. So, if your employee is providing you one-to-one value, your staff member is providing you one-to-one value, so they're costing at least what they're bringing in, and then maybe there's some upside in like having that part of the business done. That's great, but like you should be going for way higher multipliers. And the smaller your business is, the more important this is. Contractor paying a person $30 for a service better produce you $60 in value, right? Or more. If you're contracting people for YouTube videos and you're paying, I've seen this over and over again, and I'm so mad at people doing this. You spend $100 to $150 on editing total between your thumbnail and your title video. Your YouTube revenue is $5 a month. Like, what the hell are you doing? Stop doing that. Edit yourself. Like, are you busy? Are you busy? I edit my own videos. I'm editing this video. Okay, I edit my own videos. I guarantee you I'm more busy than anyone listening to this. Besides like some like super high powered dude that's like CEO by an executive chair that just got offended. Sorry, multimillionaire guy. Okay, like I'm not more busy than you, but 99% of you I'm more busy than you. I edit my own videos, right? Like don't use that excuse ever. Like if you're spending $150 or like $100 or $80 or $50 and on something that makes you $5 a month, like what are you doing, right? You're not planning for your future at that point. You're procrastinating on the skills that you choose not to learn because like you'd rather like laze your way out of it. The problem with money, and like I think up into a crazy point, like I think I would edit my own videos up until my YouTube was making like $10,000 or $20,000 a month, and then maybe even still, just so I'm in the game again, back in the game, right? Doing my own sales, multi-million-dollar company, doing my own sales. Why? Can I hire people for that? I could hire with the profit we make right now. I could hire 2 to 3 extra salespeople. Right? Like, why am I not doing that? Why is Matt not doing that? My co-founder, because we're just sitting here trying to figure out how this game works, and we're the ones telling people how the game works. So we better know it. So like, if I don't do sales every day, I don't know how the game works, and I'm not learning it. I'm sitting my time learning that so that salespeople can be better. in my sphere. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not saying this to come at you like I'm a little bit of Gary V energy here, which is I understand is like a little bit obnoxious, but I'm trying to like help this idea of like way too many people are spending money on super stupid shit. And I just see it over and over and over again in Discord. I see it over and over and over again. Like and like the most prominent offenders of this are spending huge amounts of money on like marketing, right? Like you pay I have like clients where like they've paid like an SEO firm $5,000 to $10,000 to like improve their search results, right? And like you go read the contract and there's like nothing objective about like, well, what's your page rank going to be? How many visitors is going to be? Do I have to pay this money if this doesn't happen? Right? Like that kind of thing. It's just like this sort of like weird subjective thing. You should know the service that you're paying for, right? You should know like, and that goes back to like KPIs for everything, objectives for everything. Probably a separate talk I need to do for just that on its own. But yeah. So going back to like that 1, 3, 6 month plan for that employee, like should attach an ROI value, right? That's at least like 3 to 5x what you can get. But if you can 2x it, great, right? You're doing better than me if you can do that. So ROI 3x, 5x value has to be. If you can do 2, great. Yeah. So once you're past the point of like spending extraneous money on stuff you don't need through contractors and employees, and you can justify every single expense that you're making against an objective value return. If you can do that, you're running a successful business, and then you've got some play capital to invest back like 5 to 10% of your revenue in like skunk works or like kind of experimental stuff that might have exponential value. So I always say like you want to redo your sign, because you think it's going to attract more customers. Like that $1,000 should go to 500 to 1,000 follower Instagram pages where people can directly market your restaurant. And then once you get the tables filled, you can do your stupid sign. Right? Like it's like that kind of thing. I just think that like we would all benefit as a community here, myself included, by thinking a lot more about how value translates, right? So when you get a W-2 employee, I always feel having a W-2 employee is a very heavy weight. And I think, and when I talk to a lot of other business owners, they don't share this, and I get a little worried. There's either an ego thing, so they kind of think like, oh yeah, I have staff, I got people, they have that mentality, and they're like that, like, hey, give me a call. Like there's this esports guy that I was talking to. I can't say who it was. It was a very prominent esports team, and he employed a guy full time for contracts, just to write contracts. Now, I've written all my own contracts. Like I wrote all my own contracts for CLG. Occasionally for really important one, I had it evaluated through a lawyer. I would write it, and then I would save money on it. Like by, again, like this is like there was a 100-person company at the time. I'm writing contracts, right? I'm like writing contracts for this to give you an idea of like how I view this. And I would occasionally, like, for very important stuff, hire out like contractors, right? But this guy was in a business that was equivalent to CLG at the time, and he had a full-time contractor guy, just writes contracts, pay them full-time, right? No way that this is a 40-hour a week job. Pay him very highly, like 70, 80K a year. So that when I was talking to him about getting a player, we were doing a buyout for a player, and he pulls up his cell phone and calls this contractor guy, and he gets him on the phone right away, and he's like, the contract will be sent this afternoon. So he has that ability, and that's what he's paying $70,000 for. Is there an ROI from that guy? Hell no. Can he contract that for $100 a pop from some lawyer? Yep. But that's the business owner mentality. It's like, I've got people, right? That's that story there. I've got people. So you don't have people. People have you. It's a massive weight to have an employee. Every time I have an employee, I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta hire someone again. Oh god, this is so much. So just thinking about it in that way, I think is more productive, because again, like you work for those other people, and so I think that the consideration to have a W-2 employee should be very heavy indeed. Contractors are less scary, though. You still owe them something. I still feel like I owe all the contractors like my attention and time, if they request it. And I think they kind of set expectations that like I don't like to be directly contacted by contractors for things outside of contracting. So, and you can push back very quickly against a contractor that's taking a lot of your time for free. As they should push back against you if you're taking a lot of their time for free, right? And say, hey, you should pay me for this. Super reasonable conversation. So what? That's 30 minutes of employee, contractor, intern stuff. I think we're good there. If you have any questions or anything about this and you want like more clarifications, this is a huge subject. So just like this overview is a lot of me rambling and kind of bullshit about this. But if it's valuable, let me know. And just tell me in the comments like of this, like if this is something that you want to hear more about, or you have specific questions pertaining to this. Hope it's helpful.